Well, hello everybody, and welcome to my latest video. Welcome back. It's so nice to have you all here, all my friends. We can come over, we can talk about some records. And I've had these records here now for quite a while. And they are the Abbey Road half-speed masters of the Roxy Music. I've got 180 gram. Yeah, that's about the difference in it. And they're supposed to be half-speed mastered from the original quarter-inch tapes at Abbey Road Studios. And I had heard of a lot of people that were saying that these were really good. So I decided, well, I'll have a forte into it. I'll find out, you know, what do I think about them, right? And I've got Siren and the first LP, the self-titled. Because I have first editions of all the Roxy Music albums on the Japanese label, except for this one, which I have the pink rim. That's why I got this, to compare an original UK press to the Abbey Road stuff. And then compared the original Japanese press to the Abbey Road. And I have this, of course, this is the Japanese record. It doesn't have the OB strip on it, because originally I purchased the original UK press. That's the original record that I had bought, and that had fantastic sound on it. I love that record. And a lot of times if I wanted to listen to my stereo, if I got a new piece of equipment or such, I'd put that record on. I knew how it sounded, because it had really good fidelity. And then I was buying some records out of Japan, and this happened to be something, and I think I paid $7 or something for it, right? It didn't have an OB on it, but it was really nice condition. So I said, well, I'll just throw it in. I can resell it, whatever, right? And then as I was cleaning the records and getting them ready for sale and such, I said, you know what? I've done this before. I need to compare that record to the one I have, just for, you know, for giggles, right? And the more I listened to it, yeah, I heard stuff on this one I wasn't hearing on the original UK pressing. So I sold the UK and I kept the Japanese press. So now that that's out of the way, I wanted to talk about these half-speed masters out of the UK from Abbey Road. And I had them quite a while. I bought them months ago. And I was having trouble listening to them, because I was having a hard time hearing any difference in the records. So today, I listened to them again. Last night I listened to them, and I listened to them again some more today. Because the more you listen, the more apparent the differences become. Because when you get a superior, let's just say, for instance, you go to a hi-fi shop and you listen to a stereo that's a lot better than the one you have. And you're listening to it and you go, you know what? Yeah, it sounds a little bit better, but my goodness, the price difference is not worth it. Mine's almost as good as that. In fact, sometimes I think mine is better in some respects. I don't need to waste my money on this. But now, if you were to take that stuff home and listen to it for a month, now you're getting used to all the new stuff on there, all the new sounds, your brain's being able to process all that stuff. It's hard for your brain to pick up on all that stuff. It really is. It takes the time. You need to train your ears, they say. You have to have an educated ear, right? Now if you do that, and then you go back to your old stereo, it's like, oh my goodness, doesn't sound good at all. Because now, the more you listen, the more apparent the differences become. So, I really tried. I listened and listened and listened to this stuff. And today, as a matter of fact, let's just talk about this. We'll show you on the Roxy Music record something. Now, when you talk about the Runout Groove on the record, this is the half-speed mastered one out of the UK, and you can see the Runout Groove. That's the difference between the label and the last part of the song. The spot where there's no music. That's the Runout Groove, as you all know, but just in case there's someone out there that doesn't, we need to say what stuff is. Now, on the Japanese one, because that was the you can say on the Japanese record, the Runout Groove is a lot smaller, right? It's about 1/3 of the size of the Runout Groove on the Abbey Road record. So what does that mean? What is that telling me? That's telling me that Japanese record was cut a lot hotter, or it's actually louder on the vinyl. It's recorded louder, hotter. And when you do that, you've got to spread the grooves apart a little bit more, because the louder it is, the bigger the waveforms are in the groove. The modulation is wider. It's louder. So one of the problems with that is on the older equipment anyway, as you got closer to the spindle, right? When you're tracing on the outside of the record, right? It's a lot longer to go around. It's a lot easier. But as you get in the middle, it's going around a lot faster to pick up the speed. You know what I mean? But as the record spins around, the closer you get to the middle, the faster the tracks are going. And that tends to pull the needle. The centrifugal force tends to pull the cartridge, the arm, towards the spindle. And if you have a low compliance cartridge especially, the compliance meaning how compliant, how malleable, how much is that needle, how bendable is it? And if it's got a high compliance, it means it's highly compliant and it will move easy. Now a low compliance means it doesn't move very easy, it's very stiff. So when you're buying a turntable, you're buying an arm, you're getting a cartridge, that's one of the things you have to be concerned with, because let's say a VPI turntable, they have what's called the unipivot, which is like one pivot, it's right in the middle of the arm, and the arm can bounce around like this. So you cannot use a high compliance cartridge with a really stiff needle, because that needle can actually move the arm instead of the arm holding it steady and just the needle moving. The needle is so stiff it can actually move the arm, and then you get mistracking, right? So that's when you need, with a high compliance, you need a gimbal arm like a Rega with the bearings on both sides. That is very rigid, and now you can use a high compliance needle on something like that. So, and that's again with the anti-skating, because as a centrifugal force comes towards the spindle, it's pulling that needle. It can bend the needle, and it can rub on one groove more than the other. The inside groove is going to get more, it's going to be a little louder on that side. Again, it's going to cause mistracking. So this is where all these things come into force. And so a lot of times, the point of the story is a lot of times they don't want to get too close to the spindle. They want to leave a lot of room, because then you avoid all those problems that when you get closer to the label, you avoid a lot of those problems. But with modern turntables, modern tone arms, I don't have any, I never noticed any problems with anti-skating on my turntable, especially because it's a Rega-based arm. It's just got that little slider you can move back and forth. And to tell you the truth, I don't notice a lot of difference with the setting of whatever I put it on. You notice it more if you put too much anti-skating. When you go to put your arm down, it wants to pull over, right? That's when I know I've got too much. I don't like it when I'm trying to put the arm down and to go to a certain track and it's moving over. You've got too much anti-skate at that point, in my opinion. So anyway, the reason I'm talking about this is I'm listening to the Japanese version, right? and comparing them. And now the song I'm comparing is Sentimental Fool. And there's a part on the record where the drums really start a kicking. And then Brian Ferry starts to sing and they're harmonizing, and then the saxophones come in. Well, in the Japanese pressing, the drums are just a kicking, and the dynamics and the cymbals are just a shimmering, and there's lots of drive and impact, and the bass is coming in deep and strong. And then I put on the half-speed master, and it sounds really nice, but it just doesn't seem to have the dynamics that the Japanese one has. So knowing about the Runout Groove difference, and that being hotter, what that usually means as well is it's going to be a little bit louder on that record because it's made hotter, so it's louder. That's why they have to spread it, get closer to the stylus. I mean, closer to the center point of the record. So I got my SPL meter and I took some readings, and I was very, very conscious of exactly where it was on the record I was listening to. I would listen to exactly the voice where he was singing those words, and I did it probably at least 10 times between both records. And it was right on when he said a certain phrase, the SPL was right there, right on exactly the same basically. So I decided, well, what I'll do is for the giggles of it right now, I'll just try and turn up that half-speed master a little bit. Just make it a little bit louder. And basically everything came into focus. Everything was great. The short and long and short of the whole thing is these half-speed masters now are really, really good records. On this one, really I couldn't tell any difference. All the different songs that I used and I listened to, and I just did it again quite a bit. Really, there is a subtle difference to them. You really have to listen. Like I said, I listened a lot to these records because it was really hard for me to tell any difference. And there is a subtle difference, but it's not a plus or a minus in any way. These Abbey Roads, they did a really good job of these Roxy Music records. They really did. I'm very, very impressed with them. So let's just talk a little bit about the record itself. Now, with the Roxy Music, the half-speed masters, they do come in a gatefold. They're very nice. They come with an inner sleeve, nice shiny, thick inner sleeve. But of course, you know, if you start putting records in these things, which they used to put in there just a few years ago, the record would have been in here. And this edge right on here is really hard on the records. It scratches them up quite a bit. So everybody knows you need a polyline sleeve for that. So what do? They're including the polyline sleeves. And I've noticed from the records that I bought in the last few years, a lot of companies are now doing that. So I applaud all the record companies. You know, give them a bouquet when they do something good. This is something that they do, and they do it well. Of course, these are on 180 gram records. One thing I did notice between, and let's just look now at the UK press. The UK press is a gatefold. And of course, on this one, we can open up the gatefold. It's still cracking. There's the inside of the gatefold, and there's the outside. And I think the deal with all these girls on the outside, Roxy Music has had a romantic interludes, I think, with every one of these girls on these covers. I think that's part of the story of it. And here's the pink rim island, the island label. And you'll notice the outside of the label is pink. So call that the pink rim. The older island label, it was all pink. The whole label was pink, so they call that the pink island. This is the pink rim. And this being the first edition of this record, one thing I did notice now on the island label, when I would put the tone arm down, that arm wasn't moving. The center of the record was not punched exactly nicely in the center. Of course, this is, you know, a 50-year-old record. And Chad Kassem said the machine that he bought to punch that hole, to get it centered up on that master where he can make it right in the middle, he said it cost him a couple $1 million. He was really like flabbergasted that a machine has to cost that much to do a simple job like this. But it's very important, right, to get it done right. So that technology, I think, has improved a lot, because now on the half-speed master, the Abbey Road record, that arm is almost rock steady. If I look down right on top of it, I can see it just ever so slightly, which of course is not going to affect anything. And one of the things I did know I noticed on the pink rim, it does have a little more, like the Abbey Road record is really quiet. They have quiet vinyl on that record. It's really nice. Of course, the UK press is quiet as well. But I did notice in between some of the tracks, there's a little groove noise. And because of the arm moving that little bit, you can hear it go. It makes it varies in tone because of the arm moving back and forth. You'll notice that on some of your records as well. So yeah, I really recommend these Roxy Music records, because I'm not comparing these records now to an American pressing or a Canadian pressing or a secondary issue or something like that. No, these are the primo records, right? This is a UK first edition, right? And I got a Japanese first edition, which they sound phenomenal. And all the listening that I did for $25, yeah, I recommend them highly. They did a good job on these. Now, there was some of the earlier Abbey Road stuff. I think they're getting better at doing what they're doing. I think they really are. They're getting better at it, because some of the earlier stuff wasn't so good. You can tell the difference. I had some where I've got a Jade Warrior, and I think a band and a couple records now. And with the Jade Warrior, I had the original, and the original sounded like an original, and the Abbey Road sounded like a reissue, if you know what I mean. It just a little bit of a veil over the whole entire sound of the record. But not with these. These really have a nice, good clarity to them. And I tried to listen to the piano and the register of the piano, and there's all the harmonics structure in there. I really couldn't find anything to report on. Everything was really, really good. So, and even Brian's voice, you know how he's got a lot of inflection in his voice. I tried to pick that apart, and I couldn't find any differences in that either. So I really want to hand it off to these records. I know a lot of people said they're really good, but I said, you know what, I can always find something wrong with anything, right? Really, I couldn't. I tried, but I did want to point out now, when this SPL level was exactly the same, I checked it with the meter, the Japanese one did have more impact, more life to it. But when I cranked up the other one, yeah, it sounded great. It sounded good. So, because it depends now. If the louder one always going to sound better. But that's my findings. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in. We are listening to some music in the background. Van der Graaf, off their greatest hits from 68 to 71. This is a really good record because it actually comes on the Pink Scroll label, the Pink Charisma label. And they didn't used to be super expensive. Usually when you want to get that label, they charge a premium for it. But because this is just like a best of, I think I only paid like $10 for this, but that was a few years ago, of course. So if you ever come across this record, yeah. Well, look what it used to cost, right? £1.49. That's what they sold for back in the day in the UK. So yeah, really good record. Highly recommend it. And thanks again for watching, and bye for now.